Lily Evans clutched her favorite ice cream cone in one hand as she skipped along the cobblestone path of Riverside Park, occasionally glancing back to make sure her mother was still in sight. At 8 years old, she possessed the curious spirit that defined childhood, boundless, fearless, and sometimes reckless. Her mother, Sarah, sat on a bench nearby, momentarily distracted by a phone call from work. The spring afternoon buzzed with activity as families enjoyed the perfect weather, children's laughter floating on the breeze. That's when Lily spotted him. Even at her young age, she knew he was important. The way people cleared a path as he walked, how his security guards flanked his sides, the expensive suit that seemed out of place in the casual park setting. Alexander Hayes, the billionaire CEO whose face frequently appeared on television and in magazines, was strolling through the same park as her. But Lily's interest wasn't driven by his wealth or status. No, her tiny heart raced for an entirely different reason. She had seen him before, not on TV, but in the worn photo albums that sat on the highest shelf in their cramped apartment. Alexander Hayes stood smiling in pictures with her mother from years ago, his arm draped casually around Sarah's shoulders, both looking impossibly young and carefree. Lily had discovered the albums last winter while searching for Christmas decorations, and when she asked her mother about the handsome man in the photos, Sarah had quickly shut the album and changed the subject. Without a second thought, Lily slipped away from her mother's line of sight. The ice cream, now forgotten and dripping down her hand, was tossed into a nearby trash can as she navigated through the crowd, keeping her eyes fixed on Alexander's tall figure. Her heart pounded in her chest, equal parts excitement and nervousness flooding her small frame. "Lily!" She heard her mother's distant call, but curiosity pushed her forward. Alexander Hayes stopped to take a call, his security detail creating a perimeter around him near the park's central fountain. Lily waited for her moment, then ducked between two distracted guards and walked straight up to the billionaire. Standing at barely 4 feet tall, she tugged gently at his designer jacket. Alexander looked down, annoyance flashing briefly across his face, before softening at the sight of the small girl with untamed curly hair and bright green eyes that seemed strangely familiar. "Hi, sir," Lily said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Why do you appear in my family's photo albums?" The simple question struck Alexander like a physical blow. The phone slipped from his hand, clattering against the pavement. His security team tensed, but he waved them back, suddenly captivated by the child before him. "What did you say?" he asked, kneeling down to her level, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're in the pictures with my mom, the old ones. She gets sad when I ask about them." Lily's eyes were honest and questioning. "Are you friends?" Before Alexander could respond, Sarah Evans burst through the small crowd that had gathered, her face ashen with fear. "Lily! Oh my God, Lily!" She reached for her daughter, then froze when her eyes met Alexander's. The color drained from her face as recognition dawned. "Sarah." Alexander breathed her name like a long-forgotten prayer. "Alex." It wasn't a question, but a statement, her voice carrying years of unspoken emotions. The bustling park seemed to fade away as the three stood in their own bubble of tension and confusion. Security guards hovered anxiously, unsure of the situation unfolding. "Mummy, you know him." Lily looked between the adults, sensing the heavy atmosphere. Sarah pulled Lily protectively to her side. "We need to go, honey." "But Mom—" "Now, Lily." Her voice left no room for argument. Alexander stood, composing himself. "Sarah, please, after all this time." "This isn't the place," she cut him off, her voice trembling slightly. "We have nothing to discuss." Lily watched with growing confusion as her mother's grip on her hand tightened. "But Mom, he's in our pictures. Why won't you talk to him?" A flicker of something, pain, regret, or perhaps both, crossed Sarah's face. "Lily, please." Alexander reached into his pocket and withdrew a business card, offering it to Sarah. "At least take this. My personal number is on the back." Sarah hesitated, then reluctantly accepted the card, tucking it into her pocket without looking at it. "Goodbye, Alex." As Sarah pulled Lily away, the little girl looked back over her shoulder at the billionaire, who stood motionless, watching them leave. The security team closed ranks around him once more, but Lily could see the change in his posture. Something had broken open inside him. That night, as Sarah tucked Lily into bed in their modest 2-bedroom apartment on the city's east side, the questions began. "Mom, why did you run away from that man today? The one from our pictures?" Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, her shoulders heavy with unspoken burdens. It's complicated, sweetie. Sometimes grown-ups have histories that are difficult to explain. Were you friends? He looked sad when we left. Sarah brushed a curl from Lily's forehead, her touch gentle. We were more than friends once, a very long time ago. Like boyfriend and girlfriend? Lily's eyes widened with childish delight. A small, sad smile touched Sarah's lips. Something like that. But that was another life. Is he rich? He had people protecting him like in the movies. He is now, he wasn't always. Sarah's voice grew distant, lost in memories. When I knew him, he was just Alex. Brilliant, ambitious, but struggling like the rest of us. Lily's young mind tried to reconcile the imposing figure from the park with the laughing young man in their photo albums. Do you still like him? Sarah's hand stilled. It doesn't matter anymore, Lily. Our worlds are too different now. But enough questions, sweetie. It's late and you have school tomorrow. Sarah kissed Lily's forehead and turned out the light. But later that night, when Lily was supposed to be asleep, she crept into the hallway and spotted her mother sitting at the kitchen table, the forbidden photo albums open before her. In the dim light, Sarah traced her fingers over a photograph, tears silently streaming down her face. And clutched in her other hand was Alexander's business card. From her hiding place, Lily made a decision. If her mother wouldn't reconnect with the man from their past, perhaps it was up to her to bridge that gap. After all, she reasoned with the simple logic of childhood, if Alexander Hayes was important enough to be in their family photos and make her mother cry, then he was important enough to be in their lives. Little did she know that her innocent question in the park had already set in motion events that would unravel secrets buried for nearly a decade, secrets that would test the boundaries of forgiveness, reveal painful truths, and potentially heal wounds that both Sarah and Alexander had carried silently for far too long. Alexander Hayes stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching the city lights flicker to life as dusk settled over the skyline. 3 days had passed since his encounter with Sarah and Lily in the park, and he hadn't been able to focus on anything else since. The quarterly reports sat unread on his desk, meetings had been delegated to his executive team, and sleep had become an elusive luxury. "Sir, the board is getting concerned about your sudden absence." His assistant, Eleanor, stood in the doorway with a tablet clutched to her chest. "Should I continue to reschedule your appointments?" Alexander didn't turn from the window. "Tell them I'm dealing with a personal matter. Everything is under control." "Of course." Eleanor hesitated before adding, "The investigation team sent over their preliminary report. It's in your secure inbox." At this, he finally turned. "Thank you, Eleanor. That will be all for tonight." After she left, Alexander unlocked his computer and opened the report. After meeting Lily in the park, he had commissioned a discreet investigation into Sarah Evans' life over the past 8 years. The report wasn't invasive, just public records and basic information, but what he found made his chest tighten with a mixture of guilt and admiration. Sarah had put herself through nursing school while raising Lily alone. She worked night shifts at Metro General Hospital, lived modestly, and by all accounts was a devoted mother. Their apartment was in a working-class neighborhood, safe but far from luxurious. No romantic partners appeared in the picture, at least none serious enough to share her address. What the report couldn't tell him was why she had disappeared from his life without a trace all those years ago, just when his first company was beginning to take off. They had been college sweethearts, inseparable for 3 years. They had planned a future together, or so he thought. Then one day, she was simply gone. No explanation, no goodbye, just an empty apartment and a returned engagement ring. Alexander's phone buzzed with an incoming call from his younger brother, James. "You're still at the office, aren't you?" James asked without preamble. "Where else would I be?" "I don't know, maybe sleeping, eating, having some semblance of a normal human existence." James's tone was light, but laced with genuine concern. Alexander sighed. "I saw Sarah 3 days ago." The line went silent for a moment. "Sarah Evans? You're Sarah?" "She has a daughter," Alexander said quietly. 8 years old. The implication hung in the air between them. 8 years. The timeline aligned perfectly with Sarah's disappearance. "Alex," James started cautiously, "are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" "I don't know what to think, but the girl, Lily, she has my mother's eyes, James. That same unique shade of green. That doesn't necessarily mean... She found photos of me in their family albums and recognized me in the park. She asked me why I was in her family's pictures. Alexander's voice cracked slightly. What am I supposed to do with that? James exhaled slowly. Have you tried calling Sarah? She hasn't used the number I gave her. I'm not surprised. She practically ran away from me in the park. Maybe there's a reason. There'd better be one hell of a reason for keeping my daughter from me for 8 years, Alexander snapped, then immediately regretted his tone. I'm sorry. I need to know the truth. Just don't do anything rash, Alex. Whatever happened between you two, that child deserves careful handling. After ending the call, Alexander poured himself a measure of scotch and returned to the window. The truth was, despite his outward success, the multi-billion-dollar technology empire, the philanthropic foundation, the global influence, he had never filled the void Sarah left. Relationships came and went, but none touched the part of him that had belonged to her. And now there was Lily, possibly his daughter, living just a few miles away yet separated by a chasm of secrets and time. Sarah sat in the hospital break room, nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee. Her 12-hour shift had barely begun, but exhaustion already weighed heavily on her shoulders. Since the encounter with Alexander, sleep had been impossible. You look like you've seen a ghost, remarked her colleague and friend, Dr. Mia Chen, sliding into the seat across from her. Something like that, Sarah murmured. Anything you want to talk about? You've been distracted for days. Sarah hesitated, then reached for her phone. She pulled up a recent business news article featuring Alexander at a charity gala. I used to know him. Before all this. She gestured vaguely at the image of Alexander in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. Mia's eyes widened. Alexander Hayes. The Alexander Hayes. How did you know him? College. We were together for 3 years. Sarah put her phone away, uncomfortable with even looking at his image. It ended badly. Define badly. I left, without saying goodbye. Returned his engagement ring by mail. Mia whistled low. That's cold even for you, Sarah. I had my reasons. Sarah's tone made it clear the subject was closed. But later that night, as Sarah checked on a sleeping patient, her phone vibrated with a text message from an unknown number. We need to talk about Lily, please, Sarah. I deserve to know the truth. Alex. Her hands trembled as she stared at the screen. How had he gotten her number? But of course she knew the answer. Alexander Hayes had resources and connections that could find practically anyone. Before she could decide how to respond, a second message appeared. Is she mine? 3 simple words that carried the weight of 8 years of secrets. Sarah leaned against the wall, suddenly lightheaded. She had always known this day might come, had rehearsed explanations and justifications in her mind 1,000 times. But now that the moment was here, words failed her. The next morning, Lily sat at the kitchen table, pushing cereal around her bowl while their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, prepared her lunch for school. Your mum said she'd pick you up after her shift ends, Mrs. Peterson reminded her. I'll walk you to school today. Lily nodded absently, her mind elsewhere. Since meeting Alexander in the park, she had been piecing together clues like a detective in her favorite mystery books. She had snuck another look at the photo albums when her mother was showering, studying the images of the younger Alexander and her mother. They looked happy, their smiles genuine and eyes bright with something Lily recognized as love, the same expression princesses had in her storybooks when they found their prince. But there was something else nagging at her. In one photo, Alexander wore a university sweatshirt identical to one her mother kept in a box under her bed. Too big for Sarah, but something she occasionally slept in when she thought Lily wasn't looking. After Mrs. Peterson dropped her at school, Lily made a decision. Instead of going to her classroom, she waited until her neighbor left, then slipped out of the school gates. She had Alexander's business card. She had found it in her mother's purse the previous evening, and she knew exactly how to get to the address printed on it. Her mother had taught her how to navigate the city's subway system for emergencies, and in Lily's 8-year-old mind this qualified as one. 40 minutes later, she stood before the imposing glass tower of Hayes Technologies, her backpack clutched tightly to her chest, heart racing with equal parts fear and determination. The lobby was a cavernous space of marble and steel, intimidating in its grandeur. Security guards stood at various posts, and well-dressed professionals hurried in every direction. Taking a deep breath, Lily approached the reception desk, standing on her tiptoes to see over the counter. "Excuse me," she said, her voice small but steady. "I need to see Mr. Alexander Hayes, please. It's very important." The receptionist looked down with a mixture of amusement and confusion. "Do you have an appointment, young lady?" "No, but he knows me. My name is Lily Evans. He met me in the park." She placed his business card on the counter. "See? He gave this to my mom." The receptionist's expression softened. "I'm sorry, sweetie, but Mr. Hayes is a very busy man. You can't just walk in to see him." "But I need to ask him something important," Lily insisted, her voice rising slightly. "It's about my mom and the pictures in our albums." A security guard was beginning to take notice of the exchange, moving closer with a concerned expression. Lily felt panic rising in her chest. This was her only chance to discover the truth. "Please," she begged, "can you just tell him Lily Evans is here? The girl from the park?" The receptionist hesitated, then picked up her phone. After a brief conversation, she looked at Lily with surprise. "Wait here." Minutes later, the elevator doors opened, and Alexander Hayes himself stepped into the lobby, his expression a mixture of shock and concern. When his eyes found Lily standing small but defiant by the reception desk, something shifted in his face, a softening, a recognition. "Lily," he said, approaching her slowly, "what are you doing here? Does your mother know where you are?" Lily shook her head, suddenly aware of the enormity of what she had done. "I needed to ask you something, and Mom won't tell me the truth." Alexander knelt down to her level, just as he had in the park. "What did you want to ask me?" Lily took a deep breath, gathering all her courage. "The man in the photos with my mom, you. She keeps your old sweatshirt under her bed and sometimes cries when she looks at the pictures. Her green eyes, his mother's eyes, locked with his. Are you my dad?" The lobby fell silent around them, the question hanging in the air like a physical presence. For a moment, Alexander couldn't speak, the directness of the child's query striking him speechless. "Lily," he finally said, his voice gentle but serious, "I think we need to call your mother right away." Sarah's phone rang as she was finishing her night shift at the hospital. She didn't recognize the number, but something compelled her to answer. "Ms. Evans, this is Eleanor Winters, Mr. Hayes' executive assistant. Your daughter is here at Hayes Technologies." Sarah's world tilted on its axis. "What? That's impossible. Lily is at school." "I'm afraid not. She arrived about 30 minutes ago, asking to speak with Mr. Hayes. He's with her now in his office." The phone slipped in Sarah's suddenly clammy palm. "Put Alexander on the phone. Now." A moment later, his voice came through, professional but strained. "Sarah, Lily is safe. She came here on her own. She's asking questions that I think we both need to address. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't you dare say anything to her until I arrive." Sarah ended the call and rushed to the locker room, her hands trembling as she gathered her belongings. Her carefully constructed world was collapsing around her. 30 minutes later, delayed by morning traffic, Sarah burst into the Hayes Technologies lobby. The receptionist, apparently forewarned of her arrival, immediately directed her to a private elevator. "Penthouse level," the young woman said, swiping a security card. "Mr. Hayes is expecting you." The elevator ascended with excruciating slowness. Sarah tried to calm her racing thoughts, to prepare for the conversation she had avoided for 8 years. What would she say? How could she explain her choices? Would Alexander ever understand? When the doors opened, she found herself in an elegantly appointed reception area. Eleanor Winters, whom Sarah recognized only from business magazines, stood waiting. "Ms. Evans, please follow me. They're in the conference room." Sarah was led down a hallway lined with awards and press features, highlighting Alexander's meteoric rise to success. Each one felt like a reminder of the life she had chosen to leave behind. Eleanor opened a door, revealing a large conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. At the far end, Lily sat at a massive table with a hot chocolate and a plate of cookies, while Alexander stood a respectful distance away, deep in conversation with a man Sarah recognized as James Hayes, Alexander's younger brother. When Lily spotted her mother, she jumped up, her expression a mix of defiance and guilt. "Mom!" Sarah rushed to her daughter, kneeling to embrace her tightly. "Lily, what were you thinking? I was terrified when the school called to say you never arrived." "I'm sorry, but I had to know," Lily whispered, her small voice trembling. "I asked him if he's my dad." Sarah froze, her gaze slowly rising to meet Alexander's. The intensity in his eyes made her heart contract painfully. "Perhaps Lily could spend a few minutes with Eleanor," Alexander suggested carefully. She has a wonderful collection of books in her office. Sarah nodded numbly, and James stepped forward. I'll go with them. Make sure she's comfortable. The unspoken understanding between the brothers was palpable. James would keep Lily occupied while Alexander and Sarah finally confronted their past. After they left, silence descended, heavy with 8 years of unspoken words. She has my mother's eyes, Alexander said quietly, breaking the silence. I noticed it immediately in the park. Yes, Sarah admitted. She does. Why, Sarah? Why would you keep this from me? What did I do that was so unforgivable that you would deny me the knowledge of my own child? Sarah moved to the window, arms wrapped protectively around herself. It wasn't about forgiveness, Alex. It was about survival. Survival? His voice rose slightly. What are you talking about? Your mother made it very clear what would happen if I stayed in your life. Sarah turned to face him, years of suppressed anger finally surfacing. She came to see me the day your first company received its major funding, told me I would ruin your future, that someone like me with no family connections, no prestigious background, would be an anchor around your neck. Alexander's face paled. My mother did what? She offered me money to disappear. I refused it. Sarah's laugh was bitter. But then she made her real threat. She said if I didn't leave, she would use every connection, every resource to ensure you failed, that your investors would pull out, that doors would close. And you believed her? Alexander's voice was incredulous. Your mother was on the board of 3 major venture capital firms. Her family had connections everywhere. And you were so excited about your company, so passionate. It was everything you had worked for. Sarah's voice softened. I couldn't be the reason it all fell apart. So you just left, without even telling me you were pregnant. I didn't know I was pregnant when I left, Sarah admitted. I found out 6 weeks later. By then, your company was taking off. You were being featured in business magazines. I convinced myself it was better this way. Alexander ran a hand through his hair, struggling to process her words. Better for whom, Sarah? Not for me. Certainly not for Lily. I thought I was protecting both of you, Sarah whispered. Your mother made it clear that if I ever came back into your life, she would follow through on her threats. My mother died 3 years ago, Alexander said quietly. Cancer. She never told me about this, any of this. The revelation landed like a physical blow. 3 years. For 3 years there had been no threat, no reason to stay away. I didn't know, Sarah said. I avoided anything to do with your life. It was too painful. Alexander moved closer, his anger giving way to a profound sadness. 8 years, Sarah. I've missed 8 years of my daughter's life because of my mother's manipulation and your decision to believe her instead of trusting me, trusting us. I was 23 and terrified, Sarah countered. Your career was taking off, and I was a college dropout with no prospects. What would you have done? I would have chosen you, Alexander said simply. Every time I would have chosen you and our child over any company, any success. The truth of his words hung between them, a glimpse of the path not taken. What happens now? Sarah asked, her voice barely audible. Before Alexander could answer, the door opened and Lily peeked in. Are you done talking about me yet? Both adults turned, suddenly aware of the child whose future hung in the balance of their reconciliation. Come here, sweetheart, Sarah said, opening her arms. Lily approached cautiously, looking between them. Did you tell him the truth? Is he my dad? Sarah met Alexander's gaze, a silent understanding passing between them. The time for secrets was over. Yes, Lily, Sarah said softly, her eyes never leaving Alexander's. Alexander is your father. Lily's green eyes widened, darting between the adults. For once, the precocious child seemed at a loss for words. Alexander knelt to Lily's level, maintaining a respectful distance. I didn't know about you until recently, he explained gently. But now that I do, I would very much like to be part of your life, if that's something you would want too. Lily tilted her head, studying his face with the serious concentration only children can muster. Do you know how to play chess? Mom taught me, but she always lets me win. A surprised laugh escaped Alexander. I do know how to play, and I promise I won't let you win unless you truly deserve it. Good. Lily nodded decisively. And do you like dogs? Because Mom says our apartment is too small, but I've always wanted one. Sarah ran a hand over her face. Lily, this isn't about getting a dog. Actually, Alexander interjected with a half smile, I think it's exactly about that. It's about all the normal, everyday things we could do together. He looked up at Sarah. If you're willing. The 3 months that followed were a careful dance of reconciliation. Alexander and Sarah agreed to move slowly, prioritizing Lily's adjustment above all else. Weekly dinners became their ritual, sometimes at Alexander's penthouse, other times at Sarah and Lily's apartment. Alexander delighted in discovering his daughter's personality, her love of science and mysteries, her sharp wit, her surprising talent for charcoal drawing. For Lily's 9th birthday, they hosted a joint celebration at a riverside park, neutral territory that held special significance as the place where their reunification had begun. As Lily played with her school friends, Sarah and Alexander watched from a distance, sitting side by side on a bench. "You've built an amazing life for her," Alexander said. "She's bright, confident, kind." "You did that," Sarah smiled, watching their daughter organize her friends into some complex game of her own invention. "She has your leadership skills and your stubbornness." "I prefer to call it determination," Alexander countered with a grin. Their easy banter felt both familiar and new. The wounds of their separation were healing, though scars remained. Sarah had insisted on maintaining her independence, refusing Alexander's offers of financial support beyond a college fund for Lily. She continued her nursing career, recently accepting a promotion to head nurse of the pediatric ward. "I've been thinking," Alexander began, watching her profile carefully, "about what happens next." "What do you mean?" "This arrangement is working well enough for now. I get to see Lily twice a week. We're redeveloping a friendship." He turned to face her fully. "But I want more, Sarah. I want us to be a real family." Sarah stiffened. "Alex, hear me out," he continued. "I'm not proposing marriage or suggesting you give up your independence, but Lily deserves to have both her parents fully present in her life. And I hope, that there's still something worth exploring between us." Sarah's gaze returned to their daughter, who was now looking their way with a barely disguised interest. "She's been dropping hints that she wants us back together, reading us those fairy tales with happy endings." "Smart kid," Alexander murmured, "takes after her mother." "I need time, Alex. This isn't just about us anymore." "I know, that's why I bought the brownstone next door to your apartment building." Sarah's head whipped around. "You did what?" "I close next week." Alexander had the decency to look slightly sheepish. "I'll be 5 doors down from you and Lily, close enough for impromptu chess matches and dog walks, but with separate spaces intact." "You bought an entire brownstone without consulting me?" Sarah's tone was incredulous. "Technically, I bought it for the Hayes Foundation. The lower floors will be converted into a community center for the neighborhood." Alexander shrugged. "The top floor happens to have a nice apartment with a spare bedroom for when Lily wants to stay over." Sarah shook her head but couldn't suppress a smile. "You're impossible." "I'm determined," he corrected. "There's a difference." Later that evening, as they cleaned up the remains of the birthday celebration, Lily approached them with suspicious nonchalance. "So," she began, rocking back on her heels, "Dad showed me pictures of the brownstone. It has a small backyard." Sarah shot Alexander a look. "Did he now?" "Perfect for a small dog," Lily continued, her strategy transparent. "And since Dad will be so close, we could share custody, like you'll share with me." Alexander bit his lip to keep from laughing. "That's an interesting proposal, Lily." "I'm just saying," the girl continued, "families should be together, even if they live in different houses at first." "At first?" Sarah echoed. Lily rolled her eyes with the dramatic flair only a 9-year-old could achieve. "Obviously you're still in love with each other. Anybody with eyes can see that." With that proclamation she skipped away, leaving her parents in stunned silence. "From the mouths of babes," Alexander finally said. Sarah's cheeks flushed. "She's been reading too many fairy tales." "Maybe." Alexander stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "Or maybe she's just observant." "Alex, tell me there's nothing still there, Sarah. Tell me I'm the only one feeling this, and I'll back off. We'll co-parent and be friends, and that will be enough." Sarah looked up at him, at the face she'd never truly forgotten. "I can't tell you that." Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Alexander leaned down and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle, a question rather than a demand. When Sarah responded, wrapping her arms around his neck, the kiss deepened, 8 years of separation dissolving in an instant. From across the park, Lily watched with undisguised satisfaction, already planning where to put the dog bed in both apartments. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn day, Alexander Hayes waited nervously at the front of a small chapel, James standing supportively at his side. When the doors opened and Sarah appeared, radiant in a simple white dress, Lily preceded her down the aisle, beaming with triumph as she carried a small basket of flowers. Beside her trotted a cheerful golden retriever puppy, a blue ribbon tied carefully around his collar. As Sarah reached Alexander, he took her hands in his. "No more secrets," he whispered. "No more running," she promised. And as they sealed their vows with a kiss, Lily's delighted applause echoed through the chapel, the sound of a family finally, perfectly whole.